Welcome to the Health Revolution, the program that shows you how to have a life of vibrant well-being. In a world full of noisy health trends, we bring you clarity. We reveal the science-backed strategies that truly work in a sea of fads. We explore the physical strength, emotional resilience, and mental mastery. These are the keys to an enriched life. Join us for inspiring interviews with champions who've conquered life's health challenges. Are you ready to unlock your potential to live with vitality and purpose? Then join the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands. Let's embark on this transformative quest. Together, we're about to change the game, starting now. The information provided in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Viewers should use their own discretion and consult with a healthcare professional for personalized guidance and recommendations. Welcome, everybody. You are watching the Health Revolution, and we're so glad that you are here joining us. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and no matter which way you're tuning into us, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button. We want to stay connected to you. In addition, at the bottom of your screen, there is a little tab for show episode notes. Definitely keep that in mind. There's some very important information pertaining to today's episode that you are going to want to reference going forward. And of course, when it comes to optimizing health, it's not just the physical elements, but the emotional resilience and the mental mastery. However, there is one area that we don't give enough attention to in society, and that is toxins and the level of toxicity that is out there that we're exposed to that has chronic overall impact on our health. What does it mean to detoxify? What are some of the dangers with the toxins that surround us, and how much of an impact does it make on our lives going forward? We may not know, and so it's important that we start to know so that we can make better decisions moving forward. My guest today is someone who is incredibly knowledgeable about identifying toxins and the process of detoxification with and living a holistic life. Let's get to know her. Take a look at this. Meet Rebecca Lee, a visionary in health and wellness and the author of the Mercury Detoxification Manual. With a deep commitment to holistic practices and education, Rebecca empowers individuals to take control of their health. She shines a light on the often overlooked dangers of heavy metal toxicity and gut issues, problems that many fail to fully understand. Through her expertise, she not only emphasizes the gravity of these health concerns, but also offers practical solutions for detoxification and healing. Her approach provides essential guidance on what to do and what not to do to achieve true wellness. Today, we get to dive into Rebecca's powerful insights and learn how her innovative strategies can help us all on our path to wellness and transformation. Rebecca Lee, welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, thank you very much. I'm well.
And let's diving right into it. How much of a danger is the exposure to toxic elements? What are we looking at today? And where is there a gap where we need to be versus where we are right now?
Well, I think that, I deal with particularly with toxic metals, heavy metals. And the main offender here is mercury. And I think that I have one colleague that referred to it as an undiagnosed epidemic. Like it's a massive epidemic in society, and very few people really understand how vast it is.
And when it comes to this, how far back did this become a mercury toxification? How far back did it start? Is there a time in our society's history where it became a huge issue?
Well, I think it's a huge chronic problem. It's causing a lot of chronic illness right now where we stand now in history. But I mean, this goes back, millennia. There were Chinese emperors that poisoned themselves with mercury. Yeah.
Why is it that we're not giving enough attention to it the way that it needs today?
Well, it's very difficult to diagnose. It causes about 250 different symptoms, and people get constellations of these symptoms. So and then so our doctor won't put two and two together that the person who's got multiple sclerosis and anxiety or whatever, that these all can be mercury poisoning. That one person's got multiple sclerosis and another person's got irritable bowel syndrome, and the next person has asthma and allergies. So it's very confusing because the array of symptoms this causes is so vast.
Now, I'm
Yeah.
curious, what fascinated you to embark on this professionally and really do a deep dive and to spend time understanding what toxins, what mercury toxification does to the body, and what got you in this area?
It was my own being sick myself. I was one of those people that had this going wrong, then that going wrong, and this problem and that problem. And I was running from doctor to doctor and practitioner to practitioner, trying to figure out what was the matter. And I finally went to I got a cancer diagnosis, and I got so scared. And my chiropractor sent me to a chiropractic neurologist, a very famous guy. And he gave me a lot of supplements, and I started to feel better, which was pretty common for me to do that. I'd start on a supplement program and start to feel better, but then I'd regress to feeling crappy again. And he finally gave me a challenge test, which we do not recommend, but it came out, off the charts for mercury. And then he had me do some improper chelation, which made me even sicker. And the internet had just started then, and I got on the internet and started poking around until I came across Andy Cutler, PhD, and the work and the research he had done on mercury poisoning. So that was the main book that he wrote, was called Amalgam Illness. I'll show it right here. Amalgam Illness, Diagnosis and Treatment. Yeah.
Now, what's his backstory? How impacting is he to this realm? What does he bring to the table?
Well, he was first of all, he was a really high IQ person, like a Mensa Society IQ sort of person. He had a PhD in chemistry from Princeton, and he had specialized in kinetics. That was his PhD. His graduate work had been in kinetics, and he was a consultant for NASA and all that sort of thing. In physics, also his undergraduate degree was in physics, and he got sick himself. Like a dentist put amalgam fillings below his gun line with access to his blood supply, and so he started to lose his capacity to think, which was just like terrible for him. And he went from doctor to doctor to doctor, like all of us do, until he wound up with what he called affectionately a voodoo doctor. And the voodoo doctor said, you have mercury poisoning from your fillings. And it had never occurred to him that the mercury fillings, I mean, he should have known that because he was a chemist, but it never occurred to him that this was possible. And it was sort of like up an epiphany. And he started to looking into ways to detox. And all the advice he got didn't make any sense to him. So he developed his own protocol.
Now, you brought up something that's alarming in that fillings, that mercury contaminated fillings were a thing. And of course, I remember my very first filling was a silver filling. And I was in the 5th grade. And so I'm now thinking of the millions of people who have had dental work done where a cavity filling had, obviously, it was a silver filling. And how far reaching is this and the potential for a toxic
Well,
reaction?
you have to understand that some people can manage this toxicity better than others. So that's genetic. The inability to excrete it very well is genetic. So this toxicity, this array of symptoms tends to run in families because it's genetic not to be able to detox very well. But that said, mercury fillings are 50% mercury by weight, and they off gas, and then you inhale that, and it goes into your bloodstream, and if you're not very good at eliminating, it builds up pretty fast. The thing is, you could get those feelings when you were 5 years old, and you won't, catapult into dysfunction until 30 years later. So it's hard to put two and two together for people too.
Have there been findings that link something of way back in the day, that in that example of someone getting a filling to then years and years later that there's
Oh
the
yeah, the
results are?
medical and scientific literature is just full of information on this. All you have to do is go and look.
So
I mean,
for the viewer who has not done the research yet, but hearing this for the first time,
well,
what are some of the symptoms that we don't realize that are part of the landscape of the potential, the deadliness behind a mercury poisoning?
there are 250 different symptoms, and the preliminary symptom, in which I notice everywhere I look, even in the dogs on the street, is anxiety, and then depression. But I mean, on the front of Andy's book here, do you know someone who suffers from allergies, asthma, autoimmune disease, ALS, ankylosing spondylitis, myasthenia gravis, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia spectrum disorders, borderline personality disorder, anxiety, panic attacks, attention deficit disorder, learning disabilities, endocrine problems, depression, OCD, manic depressive disorder, rheumatoid arthritis. There's a whole list of here. And then on his second book, he went on it. He got even more: chemical sensitivities, adrenal exhaustion, lupus, irritable bowel syndrome. There's just every, everything you see on our TV stations where they advertise a drug, because only in the United States and New Zealand do they allow that. But on our TV, they advertise, oh, here's a medicine for, something or other. It's, almost always for something that mercury can cause.
So why has it been hard to have conversations, or why have we not moved the needle forward to bring greater awareness to the general population, especially here in the US?
Well, it's iatrogenic. You need so people get very upset about it. Most of the exposure is from the medical profession, dentists, those products that must not be named, I call them. Those were full of mercury for decades, and so that's it's politically a hot potato.
Absolutely. And so let's just break down some of that. You brought up anxiety, for example.
Yeah.
And so many people have been known to struggle with it, especially in these last couple of years since COVID's been part of just how our society's been rolling. How difficult, or maybe how simple is it to distinguish? And it's probably difficult to distinguish a hard time struggling with the situation, and then just anxiety that's being amplified by something like mercury poisoning, versus a situation that someone is having a hard time handling. They're not quite sure what the outcome is going to be, and so they kind of panic.
Well, you might, like, you mean the difference between anxiety from, like justifiable trauma, or the anxiety from being poisoned.
Yes, that just kind of going, that life is life.
If the person has a real reason to be anxious, and if you take it away, they stop being anxious. But if it's sort of free floating, I've just always described anxiety as something that is kind of free floating and is looking around for something to latch onto.
And what are some other areas in life that we are more commonly experiencing, that the general population has not put two and two together and identified it as part of mercury poisoning? What are some things that we've not seen yet?
Well, all the autoimmune disease we're seeing now, for instance.
Okay.
Mercury causes autoimmune problems, and there's a lot of autoimmune issues. But I personally think it's behind. I know how Bobby Kennedy is talking about how 50% of our kids are chronically ill. And personally, I think that that's what it is.
So looking back to how we've transpired from decade to decade, has there been a spike, or has there been a turn of events, a trajectory with where this really took off in ways that now we're only realizing?
Well, I think it really took off in the 1980s there when they passed that bill about the products that must not be named, and they got the indemnity, and then the product that must not be named schedule, blew up the way it has. And I mean, and it's a fact that though they were preserved with mercury for decades, and now they say they've taken it out, but I mean, the kids are still showing up in our support groups, toxic as hell. And they improve when you chelate them. So what am I supposed to, deduce from that?
What has been the conversation? What has the conversations look like as you've talked to colleagues and those in the clinical space, and mercury poisoning comes up, or just in terms of the attention that you are giving it with your work? What have those conversations been like?
You mean with doctors?
In general, doctors or those who are still, who are trying to move, just move the pace forward so that more awareness can be brought to the topic.
This thing is so poorly understood. Like, it just goes right under the radar for most people. I mean, even when you get on the internet, you start looking around, people are looking for what's causing all this dysfunction, and they've glommed onto aluminum right now. Like, aluminum is the thing, but no, it's not. Aluminum is an accessory player in this game. It's still mercury. It always was,
And
and it
you bring
still is.
And you bring up a good point that aluminum. I remember I read somewhere that it makes up 8% of the Earth's mineral element. That it's 8% of the Earth's overall makeup. And can you distinguish between the two? Why the scare with aluminum and then mercury poisoning? What can help those who are watching, if they're worried about aluminum? What can help distinguish the two?
Well, aluminum doesn't cause this vast range of symptoms that mercury does. It causes a few, and it's synergistic with mercury, so it makes your mercury worse, and it's retained in the presence of mercury. So if you look at a toxic elements hair test, you'll see, the person. We have a way of looking at tests to see if they're positive for mercury toxicity, but people who are toxic for mercury will often have high aluminum. And then we find that when they detox the mercury, through proper chelation, that the aluminum will go down on its own. But when the mercury was removed from that schedule, um, I don't know why everybody believed that actually happened, or something happened. But then they upped the level of aluminum in order to replace the poisonousness of the mercury, because it was sort of like a stealth adjuvant. So they had to put in more aluminum. So everybody's sort of like fixated on the aluminum now because they think the mercury's gone. But I don't think it's gone. It's still there.
Is there a level of reluctance to talk about mercury poisoning and the elements of it? And if
Yeah.
so, how does it present itself as an obstacle? Is it that there are some doctors out there that completely avoid it, or is there just like a redirection? What are some things that, I'm just curious about the levels of avoidance, if they're there. What does that look like when?
Well, one of the things that happens when you realize and you figure out that you were toxic and that it explains everything, and it was mercury, you become kind of a boring zealot on the topic, and you tend to like babble on about it and try to say, but your problem is this. You're, like convert people like some sort of religion, and that's a problem, and it's a good idea to shut up. And Andy told me, Andy Cutler, my mentor, said, just tell people once and don't tell them again, and then just wait for them to hear the information somewhere else, and maybe it'll sink in. So that's the sort of a problem, is driving people away by becoming kind of obsessed with the topic. And it's a mercury symptom to become a little bit obsessive too, because there's a mercury kind of personality, like an archetype, which is a little bit eccentric and obsessed with topics. So there's that going on. And then
And
the fact that it's iatrogenic, and nobody wants to admit that.
And there's a lot that we have to go into, especially your book. First, we're going to take a commercial break. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Hi, I'm Adriana. Welcome back to Fit Bites. Today, let's dive into something that keeps your brain sharp: memory and cognitive exercises. Just like our bodies, our brains need regular workouts to stay strong and agile, especially as we age. Start with something simple: word puzzles and brain games. Crosswords, Sudoku, and apps designed specifically for brain training are excellent ways to keep your mind active. These challenges help to improve your memory, problem-solving skills, and mental flexibility. Learning something new is another powerful tool. Whether it's picking up a new language, mastering a musical instrument, or even trying a new hobby, challenging your brain with new information helps to create and strengthen neural connections. Socializing is also key. Engaging in meaningful conversations with friends or participating in group activities stimulates your mind and keeps your cognitive functions sharp. Don't forget about physical exercise. Activities like dancing, yoga, or even a brisk walk can enhance brain function by boosting blood flow to the brain and reducing stress. Mindfulness and meditation are great for improving focus and memory. Spend a few minutes each day practicing deep breathing or guided meditation to clear your mind and improve your cognitive health. Remember, keeping your brain active is just as important as keeping your body fit. Make these exercises a part of your daily routine and enjoy a sharper, more resilient mind. Stay tuned for more Fit Bites with Adriana. Welcome back to the Health Revolution. Our guest today, Rebecca Lee, she's a health consultant and she's also the author of the book, The Mercury Detoxification Manual. And we are talking about the dangers behind mercury toxicity and elements in general and what we can do as we're understanding the gravity and the impact it has on our overall health and going forward. And so, Rebecca, before the break, you were talking about just you were raising awareness to just the overall, the domino effect that mercury poisoning has on our lives. And I'm curious that as you began to, you talked about your experience with mercury poisoning and that you started to learn what can help you heal in terms of chelation and just learning different principles. You then decided to pursue this professionally to share others. What was the turning point for you professionally as you started to dive into this topic as your area of expertise?
Well, it was something that I wanted to be. It was something I wanted to do, and I asked Andy Cutler if he would mentor me, and he said he would. And then I said, okay, then how much? And he said, probably a lot because of all those poor, sick people out there. And then a couple years into that, he asked me if I'd help him write this book because he was a scientist and I'm a liberal arts major. So I was trained to write. So I did that with him, and he made me do a lot of studying because I have no technical background at all. I'm a French major. So he made me study a lot and go through all his work and reread his book and take notes and so forth. And then we embarked on writing this book together. And I learned enormous amount just from writing the book with him.
Let's talk about the book, and we're going to bring this up, the Mercury Detoxification Manual. So tell us a little bit about the backstory of the green light given to, you started to dive into it with just studying deeper than ever before. And
Mhm.
tell us the premise behind it. When did you write it, and what is the goal of the book?
Well, Andy was a sort of a terrible business person. He was a terrible businessman, and he was awful at marketing and so forth. And he wanted another book written on just any topic at all that would, add to his income. So he said I could write on anything I wanted. And I thought, well, this protocol that he's developed is not expressed very clearly anywhere. It's all over the internet, and his books, these two books that he had written already, are just so technical. And one of my friends said that amalgam illness is like reading scripture. It's really difficult to get into. And so I said, we need to write something that just puts the rules and the procedures and of this protocol down very, very clearly, so people can follow it and understand it, and make it accessible to people who have cognitive issues, because that's a big issue for mercury toxic people, is that they can't concentrate, they can't remember anything. They read a paragraph, they have to go back and reread it because they forgot the beginning before they got to the end. So we wrote this thing together. It took us about 3 years. And I really insisted that it be very, very well organized, and that things be repeated over and over, so people didn't have to go back and look for anything and then lose their place and not be able to find it again, because you're dealing with people with a lot of cognitive problems.
So you've talked about chelation. So for the viewer who does not know what that process is, can you share the definition of chelation and its purpose, and how important this is in the process of detoxifying?
It's a term that describes something from chemistry, which is very well understood by chemists. And the word chelation comes from the Greek word for crab, I think. And what you're talking about is in the case of mercury, is a molecule that's got a certain shape and structure, and it's got these two thiol groups on it, and thiol groups have a particular affinity for mercury. So on this molecule, they're shaped like a crab, just the right size to grab onto the mercury, pull it away from wherever it's lodged in the body, and start it on the process of being excreted.
So
That's what chelation is in this context. Yeah.
so how important is chelation, and how on average, how long does it take for the process to be successful, to where symptoms are noticeably better?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, because just everybody's completely different. It's just amazing how people react differently to this. But arguably, this is the only way to get it out of your cells and get it out of your body. It's not coming out on its own. Like people think, well, you can do natural stuff and glutathione will take it out and so forth. But no, that's not what's going to happen. If you want to get this stuff out of your brain and your hormone producing glands, where it's really causing a lot of problems, you have to chelate. And chelation, we use 3 agents for that. Alpha lipoic acid, which is an over the counter antioxidant, which you can buy anywhere, and nobody understands that it's actually a powerful mercury chelator. And we use DMSA, which is like a prescription medicine, and DMPS, also prescription medicine.
And so then this is a careful combination that the average person who has not studied chelation can just slop together. Is that correct?
Schlep together. Well, no, you have to follow the protocol. Like the big problem with mercury detoxification is you can mobilize this stuff. Like you can give someone a bolus dose of chelator. It'll mobilize a huge amount of mercury, and then your body will only be able to eliminate so much, and the rest will redistribute, and it will usually go to someplace worse than where it started out. Like, so you're moving a big amount from someplace where it wasn't causing you any harm into your brain, you're going to get a lot worse. So that's why this protocol is designed the way it is. So the chelators are dosed on their half-life. So you take a tiny dose of chelator, move a little bit of mercury, for instance. I mean, it chelates other metals too. You move a little bit of mercury, and when that starts to dissipate because its half life has been reached, there's another, you take another dose, and that comes in and picks it up and moves it along. So I mean, so when you dose, for instance, alpha lipoic acid on its half-life, you're taking it every 3 hours, day and night. And in the protocol has you taking it for a minimum of 3 days and intervening 2 nights. That's what you need to do.
Are there certain symptoms that a person undergoes? And obviously, there's a variety of situations in which can be tied to mercury poisoning, but are there certain criteria that has to be met in order for chelation to start? Or can someone who suspects that they have mercury poisoning, but not enough overt symptoms, could they begin at any point in time? Or is there a benchmark number of symptoms that a person has to experience?
Well, no, anybody can do it, but the big impediment to overcome is you can't do this if you have any amalgam at all in your body. So you have to go to a special dentist who knows how to remove it without hurting you, and get every last speck removed before you can start moving metals around your body. Because the chelators will leach it out of your fillings and move it all around your body and make you worse. That's a huge reservoir of mercury ions in one of those fillings. It's enough to kill you if you absorbed all of it at once.
And you bring up a good point that going to a special dentist, and these days, these are not the type of fillings that we are experiencing whenever a person has a cavity. So many dentists have virtually all, if not all, I don't know of a dentist who will use a filling, a mercury filling, but now it's a different substance. And so at some point along the line, the memo got out that this is not a good choice for cavities, would you say?
I think the military's still putting them in. I think they still put them in for Medicaid patients and on Native American reservations, things like that. So it's still going on. And someone like me, I'm 76, like I got my first filling when I was 8 or something like that. If someone my age, when I see people my age, I mean, they've had fillings removed and new ones put in, and it's just a disaster in there. They're looking at sometimes at $10,000 worth of dental work. It's really terrible. Yeah.
Well, and I do have the book in my hands, and there's one area that I wanted to highlight here,
Okay.
and this is a very fascinating book. I just want to read an excerpt. Chapter 6, you talk about the ins and outs of chelation,
Okay.
and you said if you've been diagnosed with heavy metal toxicity by a doctor, chelation therapy is considered the standard of care. It's usually administered by IV or orally in high infrequent dosages or
Yeah.
doses, excuse me. Most doctors really hate chelating their patients. They don't know how to do it properly, and the patients wind up worse than before. Many doctors have shared their stories with Andy Cutler, from when they were residents, they described watching their supervisors kill a patient with chelation. While textbooks don't talk about this kind of outcome, doctors talk to each other more frankly. And so
Yeah.
obviously
Oh,
that's a stark contrast to the professionally understanding the concern and the dangers, and then just, I guess, not knowing what to do with this information that is happening, but yet we're not 100% eliminating it from society.
the level of misinformation, if you can use that term, about this topic is really terrible. I mean, we have this Facebook support group. It has 85,000 members, and it's been around for maybe 10 years or so, I think. And it's just littered with people like who have been injured by bad advice.
And so
Sure.
when you talk about, so let me back up a little bit. So when somebody suspects that there is inexplicable symptoms that they're going
Yeah.
through, that they're just not quite sure, and maybe someone who's watching suspects that, could this really be an issue for me? What are some of your best practices that you would tell someone who's brand new to understanding mercury toxicity? What are some first steps that they can do to get the ball rolling to address this?
The first thing I tell people to do are to get on these basic supplements, and there's two minerals and two antioxidants that mercury really messes with these minerals, and those are zinc and magnesium. And you know how everybody's like deficient in magnesium these days? It's one of the reasons is that mercury knocks it out of its, the sites where it's supposed to be doing its job, and people waste it and lose it. And you need tons of extra magnesium. So we tell people to take between 800 and 1200 milligrams of magnesium a day in divided doses, 50 milligrams of zinc once a day, vitamin C every 3 or 4 hours, like candy, a minimum of 3 or 4 grams a day. And some people take way more than that. And vitamin E, which is an antioxidant which goes inside your cells. And the magnesium and the vitamin C you can take as much as you can get into your body. That means up to bowel tolerance. So when you start to get diarrhea from it, you know you've taken too much. And you cut back a little bit, and it's important to take it many times a day. Like Andy used to say, keep a bowl of vitamin C on your table and eat it like candy.
The impact that the foods that we eat, combating and making sure that we're getting our nutritional intake where it is. Where can you talk about the deficit or the gap between the supplements that you're mentioning that we can take, and maybe the overall food intake, the standard American diet, or just how people are eating, no matter where you are? How much of an impact does this have if the items we're consuming are not nutritionally sound or nutritionally dense, like say
Well,
garbage food or fast food that's out there?
Well, you can't get the levels of antioxidants and magnesium and so forth from eating food. You have to use supplements. These are you're using them medicinally, and like the fabulous supplement companies have developed these products. And thank you very much. But the question of diet is another issue. Like we have a whole chapter in the book on diet, and we say like you, mercury people will react to, depending on who they are and what happened to them, they'll react to all kinds of like ordinary chemicals in foods, and they'll react to glyphosate and other icky chemicals in food. So it's really difficult. People have to figure out their own diet and what diet works well for them, because what works well for, one person may thrive on a vegan diet, and then of course they go out and tell everybody to be vegan, but the next person needs to be on a complete meat diet, and then they think that's the solution. But actually it's just because people are so different, and how the poisoning affects them is so different, and their physiology is so different. So different diets for different people, whatever works for you.
Is there a correlation between mercury poisoning and specific conditions such as celiac disease
Oh
and
yeah.
irritable bowel syndrome?
Oh,
Do they go hand in hand? Is it that those who have had mercury poisoning have a much higher rate of being diagnosed, or have there been literature that can highlight that?
well, the gut dysfunction is really common for mercury toxic people, and it's dysbiosis, I think, is the foundation of it, and then it progresses from there to the different stages till you get right up to like leaky gut syndrome, which causes a lot of autoimmune stuff. I think, but mercury interferes with the immune system. It interferes with those aspects of the immune system that control candida, for instance, or particularly. So mercury toxic people tend to get a lot of candida, And you see that in the little kids, little autistic kids. They all have candida, they all have gut issues, and they all have adrenal issues.
This is a
So those
very fast.
are two basic things that, it messes with the HPA axis, which just affects everything in your body, and then it really affects your gut too, through the immune system and through the HPA axis, because it interferes with how your pancreas produce. I guess it's your pancreas that produces the enzymes and also it can interfere with how your body produces the acid you need for digestion. So it can mess with you in a whole lot of different ways. It's a really interesting poison.
We've got a lot to continue with here. First, we're going to take a commercial break. Stay put.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Thank you so much for watching The Health Revolution. Our show is growing, and it's all thanks to viewers like you. No matter how you found us, please hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue to deliver amazing content to you.
Introducing Launchpad, the perfect partner to help you launch your dream project to the world. We know that time is of the essence, and we're here to help you make the most of it. With Launchpad, you'll get access to the most advanced digital tools and strategies to take your idea from a mere concept to a fully fledged success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, we have everything you need to make your mark in the world. Launchpad, your ultimate launch partner.
We can take our own health into our own hands. Okay, so we'll kind of expand on that. So I take a lot of vitamins every day. Long before I started this business, my wife has had me taking my vitamin C, my B complexes, amino acids every single solitary day, and I still do, even though I still do IVs as well. But when you take vitamins orally, you get 15 to 20% of them. Some people get less because they have autoimmune issues. Some people have a lot of inflammation issues, whatever the case may be, so they don't get the absorption that they need to be getting. So they don't get their immune system built up. Doing the mobile IVs, I'm able to take your immune system, I'm able to naturally boost it.
Welcome back to The Health Revolution. Welcome back, everybody. My guest today, Rebecca Lee, she's a health consultant, and she helped author the book, The Mercury Detoxification Manual. We're talking about exposing the toxicity that society has had, and then ways to detoxify to amplify our health the way it needs to be. And Rebecca, before the break, you were going into different elements of how we started talking about how nutrition, that the type of detoxification that we need from, say, elements like magnesium and zinc, it's not enough in our foods, but that the supplements that we're getting can obviously are arming us with the items that we can offset this infiltration of mercury poisoning. And so I do want to read one excerpt. You did bring up about food and the impact of food in your book here. Just wanted to highlight chapter 9. You do go into diet. What you eat has a huge impact on what you feel. And I just want to share this little tidbit with, because it's loaded with information. So avoiding problematic chemicals in your diet. Conventional supermarkets can be high in pesticides and weed killers. Organic produce will cost more, but to the extent that you're able to switch over. Yep. And then you talk about how if you can't afford to go 100% organic, be aware of the 11 most contaminated items and at least avoid those. And then you talk about a list. I do want to share with our viewers here. The following have higher pesticide levels than any other conventionally grown food. And so you talk about a higher impact of potatoes, spinach, strawberries, peaches, apples, collard greens, raspberries, turnip greens, pears, apricots, and nectarines. And so,
I guess,
and so
about that list, I think Nanny's had it a little bit different, but it's a pretty well known list of things. If you can't get it organic, just be careful not to eat those.
Yes. And so then, is it best to have like a super super duper washing protocol for getting produce. If someone is purchasing fruit or vegetables like this, and they're just, it's not in the cards to eat organic for every single item, is it helpful to just do your due diligence to wash them a certain way to wash them? Or
I can't really speak to that. I don't know too much about it. I just try not to get,
okay.
produce from the supermarket. I go to the co-op and buy all organic as much as I can. And if I have to have something that's not organic, I wash the crap out of it and peel it too.
So then obviously places like co-op, farmers markets
Yeah,
and the like would be a better selection. Okay. So as you are continuing to make your way through professionally and just sharing with others, what are some ways that you help those detoxify? What are some ways in which you make yourself available to work with those who are just needing that help and just don't know where to begin?
Well, you can make an appointment with me. You can buy my book to begin with if you want to do it on your own, or you can go to the Facebook group and join and get all that help for free, or you can make an appointment with me and I will talk you through it depending upon where you're starting off in this process, because some people are into it already and some people it's brand new. But I'll tell you, by the time a mercury toxic person winds up with me, they're usually pretty sophisticated about their own health. They've been through the ringer with I mean, we think it's diagnostic for mercury poisoning to have like a medical record more than 1.5 inches thick, or to have been to more than 10 different doctors, something like that. That's diagnostic for mercury. Or having, there's a picture in the book where you open the person's cupboard and it's like, it's full of supplements. That's diagnostic to a certain extent for mercury poisoning.
So what are some of your favorite onboarding ways to really show support to someone who, obviously clearly you are knowledgeable in all the ways of detoxifying the body. And then I'm thinking of the person who's just really maybe beside themselves and just have mixed feelings about embracing this. So what are some of your favorite ways to show support to help onboard someone to start the process when they're working with you?
You need to make an appointment with me?
Sure, but then just in general, the elements of connection, what your specific journey is, so that they do see that sense of support. They're feeling that support, that they got the right power in their corner.
Oh, to make people like true believers in this?
Not so much true believers, I guess, for me. So what I'm thinking about is I'm thinking of the viewer who is just like, wow, this is a lot of information. And so then in addition to that, what are some ways in which are helpful and supportive that really encourage the journey to explore that this is worth it, that this is something that is.
Well, you can go get a hair test to begin with. That's one of the ways I mean, I love to use the word diagnose, but we evaluate people by looking at their hair test, and that can be informative, but it can also not show anything at all, because people who are doing a good job with their health and are taking a lot of supplements, make their hair test will often look better than someone who's not. And then the acid test for mercury toxicity is to try some rounds of chelation. If you react to a chelator, you've got something to chelate, because if there's nothing there, you won't react.
So there's a variety of different approaches that you use that that many doctors don't do. That it's just not something that gets brought up, but obviously you're leaving no stone unturned.
Yeah, well, the doctors don't know about this. They don't know how to do it properly. There are very few of them. I mean, doctors are trained in a lot of stuff, and my advice about doctors is, use your doctors to deal with your symptoms. You've got irritable bowel syndrome, and you've got this, you've got that, and you've got plethora of symptoms. And your doctor or your naturopath may be really helpful about giving you like strategies to deal with those things, but please check with me before you start any detoxing. You do it wrong, and you do it wrong, you'll be, you can really, really injure yourself.
And that's true. Obviously, this is something that needs to be carefully done with the right guidance. And so
it needs to be done properly. Yes, it's not that complicated once you figure it out and get going. But the initial state, like people talk to me, and usually I just like go through their, where they're at, their problems, get them on the basic supplements, and then get them going, chelating. And then afterwards, I mean, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again for several years. So,
we're going to take a quick commercial break. Stay right there. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Welcome back to the Health Revolution. Welcome back, everybody. My guest today, Rebecca Lee. She is author of the book, The Mercury Detoxification Manual. We've been talking about detoxifying from mercury poisoning and really elevating step by step to become healthier. Rebecca, where can we find you in the virtual space?
Well, my website is www.maybeitsmercury.com, where you can contact me from there. And then I'm under Maybe It's Mercury, just everywhere pretty much. I have Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Maybe It's Mercury, Pinterest. The only place that I'm not called Maybe It's Mercury is LinkedIn, because I started my account there with my name, Rebecca Russ Lee, and Andy wrote a recommendation there, so I don't want to lose that. So I stayed as Rebecca Russ Lee. Everywhere else, Maybe It's Mercury.
And for the viewers watching, I know we're running out of time, but the viewer who's watching who is unsure about the first step, what would be one quick advice that you would give to them in terms of reassurance and exploring the possibility of mercury poisoning that's part of that they may have experienced?
I'd say buy my book. You can read my book.
So that's
a good job explaining this whole thing. Yeah.
That's true. This is a wealth of knowledge here. I've got a copy, and there's so much to cover here, and I definitely can appreciate the just the breakdown of elements that you have here. Rebecca Lee, health consultant, author. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And for those of you who are watching, of course, our website is thehealthrevolutiontv.com. That's where you can find the latest information. You can certainly subscribe to our newsletter. You can email us with any show ideas that you would love for us to cover. Upper left-hand corner of your screen, you will find our QR code. Feel free to grab that. And then, of course, as always, every Tuesday and Thursday, you can find us on E360 TV on the Achieve TV channel, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, each and every single week. That is all the time that we have. Until next time, take care of yourselves. We will see you soon.